April 17, 2018. Okay. Robert Winchell, Joseph Schenker,
Here.
Michael Batch, Robert Ackerman,
Here.
Nicholas Alexandru,
Here.
Christopher Graziano. Okay. It's okay. Eric Cohen, Mimi Langsam, Kevin Munjal, Cindy Basilios,
Here.
Dario Gonzalez, Glenn Aceda,
Here.
Bradley Kaufman,
Here.
Doug Isaacs,
Here.
Nathan Reisman,
Here.
Joshua Bunklin,
Here.
Barbara Aziz. I know she was here before.
I think she left.
Talina Lloyd.
Yeah, she replaced her.
Talina's not her alternate. She's totally gone from REMAC now.
It's from,
Allison Burke, Jeffrey Rabridge, Heidi Cordy, Neil Floenbaum, Louis Marshall,
Here.
Michael Redlener,
Present.
Michael Hilton, Laura Ivicoli,
Here.
Stuart Kessler, Pamela Lai,
Here.
Scott Chang,
Here.
Dominic Batinelli, Peter Wire, Paul Barbara,
Present.
David Benelli,
Present.
Celia Quinn, Timothy Stiles,
Here.
Mark Cantor,
Here.
welcome Dr. Cantor, Sharice Berry, Charles Martinez, Joseph Bove, Martin Grillo,
Present.
Matthew Harris, William Fisher, Robert Krupe,
Here.
Jessica Von Voorhees, Arthur Cooper,
Here.
Yadidja Langsam,
Here.
Anthony Shalish, Christopher Sorrentino.
Thank you.
One, two, three. Yes, more than a quorum.
Excellent.
Pass around the attendance
Okay.
sheet.
All right, first I'd like to ask for approval of the March 20th minutes. Any discussion on the minutes? Any questions, problems? None? Seeing none, we'll approve the minutes. Correspondence report. From the fire department, there was a PCR inventory. There was some non-compliant paper PCRs for February from some volunteer ambulance corps. Bay Community VAC, Bayside Community VAC, Bed-Stuy VAC, Broad Channel Volunteer Fire Department, East Midwood VAC, Flushing Community VAC, Glendale VAC, the NYPD Relief Fund, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Roxbury Volunteer Fire Department, and West Hamilton Beach Volunteer Fire Department. There are no public notices from the Department of Health. The following ALS renewals were approved. North Shore University Hospital Ambulance Service, FDNY EMS, Primary Care Ambulance, New York Presbyterian Hospital EMS, First Response Ambulance, NYPD ESU, and Maimonides Medical Center. The following requests for extension for BLS glucometry were approved. NYP EMS got an extension, and the understanding is that they should be complete and compliant by June. Fordham EMS required an extension, and NYU Langone sent us an email communicating the shortage of diltiazem. This was already forwarded to the protocol committee. And that concludes the correspondence report. Okay, subcommittee reports. The executive committee did not meet since our last meeting. Medical standards, Dr. Benelli.
Thank you. So medical standards met just prior to this meeting. The protocol committee brought for two items for discussion and approval at medical standards. The first one was the supraglottic airway advisory and we discussed that already came out and talks about allowing for use of supraglottic airway devices in MCIs where there's more than one patient that may require advanced airway management and there's only one waveform capnography. And that was already approved in REMAC last time and brought to protocol for further discussion. And protocol discussed and recommended to apply this not only to MCI scenarios but any situation where there is more than, where the amount of patients that may require advanced airway management exceeds the amounts of available resources, namely waveform capnography. And the protocol committee recommended that this will be an emergency change. It was voted upon and approved in medical standards as an emergency change to allow the use of supraglottic airways without waveform capnography in a situation where the amount of patients exceeds the amount of available waveform capnographies. With of course the caveat that the minute that more resources become available, more waveform capnographies become available, they will be immediately used on those patients with the advanced airway device, with the supraglottic airway device.
So let's discuss that one first. Any discussion or questions for Dr. Benelli? So essentially the motion is that supraglottic airways can be used without waveform capnography when there are more patients than there are waveform capnography until as such time as waveform capnography is available, and that should be an emergency change that goes into effect immediately. All right, seeing no discussion, we'll vote. This is a roll call vote because we have to make a protocol change.
And this is an emergency change.
Correct.
1 second to finish writing it. Okay. So this is a vote to allow the use of supraglottic airway without waveform capnography when there are more patients than waveform capnography units in effect until more units arrive, and this is an emergency change. This comes forward from Medical Standards Committee. I'll hold the chair until last. Nicholas Alexandru,
Yes.
Christopher Graziano,
Yes.
Cindy Basilios,
Yes.
Dario Gonzalez, Glenn Aceda,
Yes.
Bradley Kaufman,
Yes.
Doug Isaacs,
Yes.
Nathan Reesman,
Yes.
Louis Marshall,
Yes.
Michael Redlener,
Yes.
Pamela Lai,
Yes.
yes. Laura, can you pronounce your last name for me just once? Ivacoli.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor. Peter Wire,
Yes.
Paul Barber,
Yes.
David Benelli,
Yes.
Timothy Stiles,
Yes.
Mark Cantor,
Yes.
Charles Martinez, Joseph Bove, Matthew Harris, William Fisher, Robert Krupe,
Yes.
Jessica Bambories, Arthur Cooper,
Yes.
and Dr. Schenker.
Yes. Okay, David?
Yes. The second item that was brought from Protocol Committee to Medical Standards and was approved was a hemostatic dressing advisory that is essentially short and sweet. You can put it up here, Joe. And essentially says that the use of hemostatic agents is approved at the discretion of the agency medical director. We all know that this is already an FDA-approved product, and REMAC and Medical Standards feels that we should leave it up to at the discretion of the agency medical director as to if, when, and where it should be used.
Any questions? Yes. Dr. Cooper.
Yes. Just curious as to why this is being left to medical director discretion, given that it's, widely accepted by, the community at large.
Well, it's also not part of the standard EMT curriculum, so the medical director would have to make sure their members are trained in its use.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion, we can vote on this advisory as it was read and adding it to the protocol as such.
Doing it as roll call?
Just to make it clear, it's a roll call because the last advisory we had specifically said not to, and it's a change to our protocol, so it has to be a roll call vote.
Nicholas Alexandru,
Yes.
Christopher Graziano,
Yes.
Cindy Basilios,
Yes.
Glenn Eseda,
Yes.
Bradley Kaufman,
Yes.
Doug Isaacs,
Yes.
Nathan Reesman,
Yes.
Louis Marshall,
Yes.
Michael Redlener,
Yes.
Pamela Lai,
Yes.
Laura Ivacoli,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
Paul Barbara,
Yes.
David Benelli,
In favor?
Timothy Stiles,
Yes.
Mark Cantor,
Yes.
William Fisher, Robert Krupe,
Yes.
Arthur Cooper,
Yes.
and Joseph Schenker.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Benelli?
And then there were two items that were both that were discussed at Medical Standards, one in unfinished business, one in new business. The first item was brought up by Dr. Seda regarding the intention of the fire department to start have our CFRs administer as needed aspirin and epi, as is already approved in New York State protocols, and to assist patients in administration of their already prescribed albuterol. This was just as brought up as information to be brought to the next protocol committee for discussion regarding with the appropriate protocols for implementation. So that was the first item. The second item was brought up by Dr. Redlener, and that's to push those pressers for discussion review at the next protocol committee.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes the medical standards committee report.
Okay. Next, I'd like to go to the QA report. Dr.
There's been
Redlener.
no meeting with QA since the last REMAC.
So the QA committee didn't meet, but I just want to invite Molly Perini, who's here from AHA, to talk a little bit about a AHA Helmsley grant, which is going to be in the region specifically for the purpose of doing quality assurance on our stroke and STEMI projects. But it's an interesting platform that they're gonna be using, which I think would be very interesting to people in the region to maybe use more fully going forward. So Molly, if you wanna.
Thanks, Dr. Schenker. Hi, everybody. Molly Freeney, American Heart Association, American Stroke Association. I know many of the names and some of the faces in the room from our Mission Lifeline work throughout the years. We have been working on systems of care through our Mission Lifeline program in New York City since 2012, with strong leads from the fire department as well as from our REMAC group. And just most recently, as you all are very aware, dove into the stroke systems of care piece. And this grant opportunity arose after some historic work with the foundation, and they brought us an opportunity to look at pre-hospital systems of care, particularly for cardiac and for stroke patients. The trust was very interested in looking and seeing what they could do in New York City specific to those two populations. And so, thanks to Doug Isaacs, we did some precursory research into some opportunities there and found First Watch, which is, I'm sure a lot of you know probably better than I do. It is a software that collates pre-hospital data, but what's really great about it is we're going to be able to build a hospital interface as well. So we're going to be able to look at outcomes and feedback from hospitals and really kind of bring this picture full circle. So like Dr. Schenker mentioned, it's a 2-year grant where the grant is intended to help support the initial build of the software, and agencies that want to participate would be specifically looking at, as part of the region, stroke and STEMI specifically. This is really just meant to be kind of an introduction to this idea. We are looking to hold a stakeholder meeting in the next couple of weeks, and I know that we'll be reaching out to your individual agencies to have further discussions with you all and answer what questions you have, but really just kind of wanted to throw out a teaser there that this is something that we found that could be a really excellent solution, particularly with that feedback loop. I know a lot of what we're talking about, particularly with quality improvement these days, is how do we bring our pre-hospital sphere and our hospital sphere together so that we can really acutely measure it and work on it. And I think First Watch is a really excellent solution for the region, and we're lucky to have some grant support of that for the region. Happy to take any quick questions, but like I said, it's really kind of a precursory dive into that this is coming. We're excited to be able to present this to you and to be able to further discuss this and later stakeholder meeting and then individual meetings with your agencies.
Okay, Mike?
No, I'd just like to reiterate that the relationship to the Stroke Systems of Care project. From that perspective, this project really dovetails nicely and may enable really a high level of quality data to be brought together. So it's something that I know that I'm looking forward to, but I'm looking forward to the stakeholder meeting as well.
Right. So the grant is specifically to look at stroke systems as well as STEMI systems and integrate that with a hospital. But this is an opportunity for us to really look at QA applications that can really help kind of tie the QA data for the entire region together in a system and implement it with a little bit of assistance from this grant, which would be great. What I would like to propose is if we can get some time early in May, maybe get a room here and have a meeting where the First Watch team could come, present the actual application to any ambulance company that's interested. We can start going over some of the obligations to the grant if you want to participate and how it can actually help agencies going forward. So if that sounds reasonable, I think we'll look to the first week or two of May to set up a meeting where everybody can get a little bit of a better handle on what exactly this platform is and how it works. Any questions? Yeah, Doug.
Well, today, I know for us, that's going to be too short notice in terms of early May, given there's a lot of activities going on. So I suggest if we can push that towards later in May. And as Molly said in a very nice presentation, there'll be stakeholder meeting for this where I'll be going in details about the program, the grant, and deliverables, and so on.
Right.
So it's just be a challenge because I think it's important that we're there as well.
Sure. I think the thought behind May was that this way by June we can start actually getting people to sign up and begin the process of implementation.
Well, the part of it is the stakeholder meeting is we have to get buy-in. It's not just the pre-hospital, the EMS component, but it's also the hospitals in terms of the outcomes and so on. So I think it's not so easy in terms of implementation because there's two components, the pre-hospital and the hospital outcomes. So I don't know if it'd be great if we get off in June, that'd be fantastic, but I think the reality is, get buy-in from the administrators at the hospital.
Well, in that case, we probably should break it into maybe two shareholders meetings, because there's the stakeholders, the pre-hospital ones who don't even know what First Watch is or how the application works. Maybe get them involved to at least see the application, and then have a meeting, you're right, with hospitals' involvement, and a much broader meeting that's gonna talk about how we can incorporate both sides of the grant. And that one, I would agree, that's gonna take a little more time to get that going. But maybe if we could try to get a date in May, to, at least for the ambulance companies, to see what this is and how it's gonna pertain to them and how they can actually benefit from participating. Yeah,
Just want to remind everybody, we have EMS week the third week of May,
correct.
so that might.
Hopefully before that, but we'll see. I mean, if that's possible. Obviously, I think what we'll do is float around some dates, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, then we'll move it to when it does work. The goal is to get, you know, the pre-hospital arena on board for using this with the grant and seeing what the advantages are to them, and then obviously a bigger meeting with the hospitals as well. Okay, so Molly, thank you very much. So Mike, anything else from QA
No, nothing specific.
on the next meeting?
I'll get back to you in just a minute.
Sorry, no.
There's nothing on the, I
That's all right.
don't think there's anything on the books.
I don't
It'll come
know
out.
about that.
We'll let the.
As soon as we get a date, it'll be sent out to everyone.
Training and education.
So training and admit on April 10th, last Tuesday. In no particular order, we have essentially concluded a canned training that can be used by providers and agencies for IM epinephrine. One thing that was revised was the skill sheet. Rather than creating our own, we're adapting the DOH skill sheet. Other than that, the didactic is complete, and that's going to end up being on REMSCO's LMS. To support the hemostatic protocol, we're going to put together a canned package for that as well that will give agencies some options if they'd like to use it. We're going to either follow the NAEMT recommendations from their TCCC program or stop the bleed materials, which seem to be a lot more generic and readily available. So one of those two. Does this group have any particular preference of which agency to follow, whether we should be following NAMT's TCCC guidelines or the Stop the Bleed materials? Stop the Bleed materials was essentially created by American College of Surgeons. It was developed for lay people to use a combination of hemostatic dressings and tourniquets, which would allow us to follow the state's flow chart for bleeding control actually pretty well. So that's the Stop the Bleed program.
And what was the recommendation from the committee?
Those were the two recommendations. I think the committee was leaning towards Stop the Bleed.
Makes more sense.
I think that sounds reasonable.
Okay. So getting instructors certified to be instructors in the region has been challenging. Instructor classes aren't available. There's always been a shortage of instructors. It continues to be problematic. The DOH changed the format and the requirements for the instructor classes. So we've reformatted our instructor classes, and we're sending those standards to the DOH, and we'll be scheduling some classes. To support that, we also need to make more regional faculty, so we're going to be setting up a list of potential instructors, current CICs, to the DOH to make more regional faculty. REMSCO is also going to be looking at alternatives to replace the current LMS in the hopes that with a lot more usage, we're going to need a more robust system. So that's where we're headed. Excuse me. The fatigue program that was mentioned at the last meeting and the meeting before, we've done some work on that. Our goal is prior to the summer, for the June meeting here, to be able to provide REMAC with something to send out as an advisory regionally regarding fatigue, and we're going to tag team with the QA committee on that. And I had a discussion actually just prior to this meeting with Drs. Benelli, Kaufman, and Redlener regarding stroke protocol training. We're gonna do something collaborative regionally, together with the fire department, that would probably be similar, if you guys will recall, to the training that was done by the DOH for spinal. That would have an online component, followed by a hands-on component that would be delivered at the individual agencies. So this would enable us to send out the new, not just the new protocol, but the new guidelines, the new assessment tools and so forth, and make sure that it's standardized. One of the issues we've had with regional training is that it has not been standardized, and each agency kind of takes whatever protocols that are sent out and does their own thing with them. So this would enable us to standardize that and make sure that it succeeds. That's basically what we got.
Sounds good. Any questions? Yeah.
Cody, great job. Are you guys branding what you put out at all? Are you making it look similar? So that it's known in the region that it's coming from the same entity? So I think that would be a great way to kind of put your footprint on what you're doing.
So there's a template. I mean, obviously, anything that we use from outside of here is not being branded, such as the staff of lead materials. You know, we'd obviously reference that. But yes, we have a specific template that we're following. So we hope to use that for everything. Right?
That'll go a
That we
long
use
way.
that.
That'll go a long way for recognition.
Yeah, well, now we have a training ed committee that's actually producing,
Yeah.
so working out well. Just gotta get our technology to.
If the EPI works, we'll use that.
Yeah, and that's my next project, is to get it on the LMS. I'll be working with poor Joe, who'll be helping. He's ignoring me
I know.
completely.
What? Okay.
It's okay, we were talking nice about you.
Always giving me work.
Any other questions for training and ed? Okay. Seeing none, regional council update, Dr. Krupa?
Okay. The Regional Mass Council of New York City met on March 27th. I can give you a brief summary. The meeting started with a moment of silence for firefighter Michael Davidson, who died in a Harlem fire. Membership, REMSCO approved the appointment of Dr. Mark Cantor, Associate Chief Department of Emergency Medicine at Lincoln Hospital, as the primary New York City Health and Hospital Corporation's representative. The other member continues to be Dr. Sharice Berry, trauma surgeon and surgical intensivist at Bellevue. Protocol revisions voted for REMAC were affirmed. Determination of public need applications, there were none. Likewise, transfer of operating authority applications were also none. A request from emergency aid training to reconsider its previously denied expansion request was referred to the QA committee. A letter will be sent to New York State Department of Health questioning why several volunteer ambulance services had certificates revoked without hearings as specified in Article 30. This letter will be reviewed by legal counsel prior to submission to New York State DOH. Community paramedicine language, we were informed the community paramedicine language will not be in the state budget. There are concerns from nursing and home health aid groups regarding the community paramedic scope of practice. A scope of practice language must be developed and sent to Albany. Lastly, FirstNet presented information on AT's First Responder Communication Initiative. And that's basically it in a nutshell. Next meeting will be held on April 24th. Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
I have one question. I don't know if I wrote it correctly. Is it FirstNet, First Watch? Are they different?
Yes.
They're different companies. Or,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
FirstNet is a
Is the
EHR,
AT&T?
and is might be something else as well. And I think it's an AT&T like preferred
Preferred
user
provider.
It's a
kind of thing.
government program that's being, AT&T is operating for the government to improve remote interoperability among emergency services.
The names are so close, I wasn't sure whether I had made a mistake. Thank you.
Okay, CMAC update.
No CMAC update, the next meeting is May 15th.
Okay. Any unfinished business? Some school update. Thank you. I just wanted to make you happy. Any new business? Dr. Isaac?
I brought this up at the protocol meeting on Friday. I couldn't realize, like, when we're looking at, say, programs, for example, the Sanso software, the PCR software, issues with tablets, and I know just from my experience of reaching out to other agencies for input, or equipment, I've had people reach out to us as well. You know, we have certain resources in terms of our department, while other agencies have their experiences. So I was gonna looked to see if there was an interest of putting up together like a regional, you can name it whatever we want, technology and medical equipment group or whatever we want to name it, just for an exchanging of ideas, experiences, or input, because a lot of stuff, it was on, I'll give you an example again about Sansio software. We all, a lot of people, I should say, a lot of agencies use that software, so reaching out and identifying what some of the issues are, we've been working with the company to make those changes. And so it was really more of creating kind of a working together in terms of just sharing ideas, and obviously it's just of interest to agencies to participate in. We can set up like a quarterly meeting or come up with ideas. But again, it was just an idea just from past year or two, reaching out to different agencies and exchanging some ideas and thoughts about various equipment from Airway to other things, software. So I just want to see if there was an interest by people on the committee, if there is interest on your agencies to participate in that. So.
Yeah, I think that that's something that's probably very important. Our policy has always been, if it's FDA approved, we don't differentiate one from the other, but we should probably, from a medical perspective, determine which is a better option, worse option, or so on.
I'll give an example, like we're looking at, right now we're looking at video lithoscopy devices, and so we've had bioskills, we have evaluation forms, so we invite people to join us when we have these evaluations for themselves. So we do it in a obviously non-biased, very transparent way. I'm just giving an example. So there's a lot of other things. So it's obviously agencies make the decisions, as you said. This body is make decisions on equipment as long as FDA approved. But again, it's just sharing information, I think, and working together as a region instead of duplicating a lot or making things accessible to everyone. So.
Well, I think that it's also an avenue for when companies do want us to discuss a product. We've generally said no, or we've let anybody come and present. I think it'd be better to have a group taking a look at these and maybe present to them and make decisions based on, informed medical decisions.
I'll send a follow-up email, and just if any agencies are interested, just let us know, and we'll come up with some fancy name, I don't know, and we'll figure a plan out and how to move forward and sharing information.
Sounds great, thank you.
Is there any way, Doug, that integration of pre-hospital medical information into charting information in the hospitals could be worked into that group?
Sure,
I think
it's all about
medically-
technology right now. Just so you know, we're working with Sansa, that whole concept of that. So we can talk fun, but yeah, the whole thing is about technology, really, we're talking about. So we're already kind of working on a few things, so we can certainly...
I think the region should support that information technology sharing, or the lack thereof, actually marginalizes the pre-hospital care in this region to an extraordinary extent, where we know nothing about the patient that the EMS providers have given to us because of lack of communication between information technologies.
I think there has been some work done in the region related to that, and related to the HIE and that type of thing. I know that we are working on the connection between our EMS service and our hospital, because that works easily, and there's no real HIPAA issues that are brought up. But we'd love to discuss those types of issues also, because I think that now with electronic data, PCR testing is like, I'm sure there's a lot of...
We're in the greatest communication age the world's ever seen, and we know nothing about the patient that comes down the block to us.
So, again, Paul, I think it's, certainly that could be one of the things we have.
Yeah, I don't know if you have more on equipment end or on software.
No, software both. That's why I brought up the EPCR software, particularly because a lot of agencies have been struggling with some of the issues. So we've been working with them. Yeah, so we reached out to all the agencies to get input. So we've been working to get those the software changes made. So, but also like monitors, that's another example. So there's a lot of stuff we've been working on it. So.
Actually, I don't know, maybe Aditya could share some light. Is there a way on the REMSCO website to make a closed message board where you could have topics, and then members who are invited can chime in on different topics?
It actually has the ability, the new website has the ability
Okay.
to do that.
Yeah, we can create password protected web pages within the website that would be accessible only to the committee members.
Okay.
I think that's a good way to share information, but I think that meeting and having a group like this might be a really important, addition.
Yeah,
Um,
Facebook group, a closed Facebook group, and only invite.
We don't have to, we already have access on our website. So what I would suggest is that we form a biomedical informatics tag that Doug will chair.
The eyes are
We'll come with
Love you, buddy.
concept, we'll come up with the,
It's gotta be like the eyes are
No,
but I think it's a
I think that it's a great idea. I think that anyone who's interested, Doug, did you want to send out an email to the group?
Yeah, I'll send up the email, we'll come up with the concept, we'll develop a little bit more, and then we'll push it out, and we'll look to, I think in-person meetings a good way to jump start it, and
Right.
I hate in-person meetings, but I think to start off, so we'll develop something, push it out, and see what the responses are.
I think that's a great idea. Anything else? Seeing no other new business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you all very much. There is no meeting in May, and everyone should have a great EMS week.
What do you lack? Taking over the world. Oh, it happens to end today.